My PhD is in neuroscience and psychoanalysis. It's a contemporary psychoanalysis, which means a lot of Freud's concepts were focused on the neo-Freudian aspect of attachments, relational, interpersonal relationships, and who the clients were from their family of origin perspective. Who are they now, and who do they want to be? And so when I work with clients myself, and then when I'm supervising, I really want to help therapists integrate some of that, trying to figure out who I am and who I want to be now. I think we need to have skills to help clients regulate. CBT, DBT, all of those skills are very helpful. But there's also clients who want to get to the root of childhood trauma or historical trauma. And so what we tend to see clients doing is they show up with anxiety, depression, addiction, any sort of symptom that you could put, and I'm using the medical model, although I don't follow a medical model, but clients might come and say, I have anxiety, I have pornography addiction, I have all of this stuff. When I supervise, I want to help the therapist understand there's some skills that could be helpful with that, but underneath it is a hurt, pain, loss, or grief that if we can get to the deeper wound, some of the symptomology will partly resolve itself. But that doesn't mean that if we have a client coming in with panic attacks, they don't need the skills as well. My role is really to help interconnect and integrate that sort of top-down work with skills with the bottom-up emotional processing of past trauma and all of that integratively. And what we tend to see is a client will come in with a current relationship problem. And what I'm listening for is what I call an attachment prediction. I'm listening for this. I don't use this language with clients, but what I'm listening for is how the client shows up in relationships and how they stay safe in relationships. So an attachment prediction is really an unconscious part of them is saying, in order for me to be safe in this relationship and not be abandoned, I have to be perfect. I have to have no voice and not speak up for myself. So there's these unwritten rules that clients just come into a current relationship with. And what I'll say to them is, what I'm hearing, Brenda, with your partner, you're not allowed to say how you really feel about things. Otherwise, you feel rejected. Is that a new feeling for you? And then we want to help find out where else in their life do they put themselves on the back seat at the expense of the needs of other people. But really, that comes from the family of origin. So from a compassionate approach, I really want to help them understand that your brain got wired to be a perfectionist or to be someone who puts themselves last because that kept you safe when you were 5. But now that protection of making sure everyone else comes first is exhausting you. And now you've come to therapy because you're anxious and you're depressed and you've got all these symptoms. But I think it's because you've been trying to adapt to a world that has just exhausted you. I'm not anti-medical model, but I really want people to know that if they want to call it a disorder and it's helpful for them, it's really a disorder of trying to fit into a world as like a square peg in a round hole. How do we help give them some confidence and compassion with themselves to think about different ways of entering the world? There are some risks to them feeling uncomfortable with trying new ways of being in the world. So that's a little bit of this sort of relational attachment. We do this pattern mapping to see where else am I people pleasing? Do I people please at work? Do I people please with my partner, with my parents? So they can start to recognize, first of all, here's the pattern. Now it's just not recognizing the pattern. We then have to keep bringing it up and rinsing and repeating with the client when we're seeing it come up, because they're not going to see it until we start bringing it up for them. So that's just a little bit about some of what I call this attachment prediction work. We do some work with the 7 emotional systems. So these are the 7 emotional systems, and you'll see we can outline here the lust, care, panic, grief, anxiety, fear, anxiety, rage, and play system. Each of these has a neurological tract in the brain, and there's also a clinical presentation that sort of links up with each of these. The premise is that we can identify the key emotional system, and if we're able to do that, be able to see the one that's activated, and also link up what the defenses are, we can bring them into conscious awareness for the client and help them work through whether it's the hurt, the pain, the loss, or grief that might be underlying and being activated in these 7 emotional systems. systems. We also call the working through rinsing and repeating, and that's where each week after week after week, we continue to point out for the client where they might be on automatic pilot, unconsciously doing something out of their awareness that's trying to get a need met that continues to fail. So we're looking at how is the client defending against a feeling. For example, the rage system can be a defense against the panic grief system, which is a separation anxiety. We might see this in clients who get very angry and agitated when they feel abandoned by their partner. So we get both systems being activated. In any event, you'll learn more about this through our supervision, helping me work with you to try to identify what system might be activated in your client and what the best course of action might be. We also teach this in our neuropsychoanalysis course as well. Really trying to primarily work with the therapeutic relationship and using transference. Brenda, I know that you're a bit of a people pleaser. We've talked about that for months. Do you ever feel like you need to please me? Now we bring what I call transference into the room and we work with the client between us. Those are all the elements that this sort of neuropsychodynamic supervision comes at play. Long story short, you'll get my take in the supervision, but there's 6-7 other people in the group. There's a lot of wisdom in the group and I'm only one voice. And my voice isn't necessarily right. Mine is just the way I've worked for a long period of time. And there may be elements of it for you that are helpful, but others that you have to say, no, this part of what Kate talked about might be helpful, but not this. So I really want you to leave a group feeling that you've got a lot of knowledge from 4, 5, 6 people. We have an 8 limit max for the CRPO here in Ontario. I want you to leave feeling like this was a space that you could come and actually use as self-care, because it's not, oh, you're presenting next week, so you have to come with a case prepared. You show up that week and we create an agenda with whoever feels they might want to share. We also talk not only about cases, but you might have a question about starting your own private practice, about the CRPO or the RCC certification. So I want you to be able to spend your money and come and ask the questions that you want to ask. If they're longer, more detailed questions that we need to have a one-on-one, then we can do that. But I think there's a lot of wisdom in the group that people can help you with. So that's how the group works. They're 2 hours long. And we start out with a 5-minute meditation because I do want to help integrate the body and into the mind work with clients, so that a lot of clients, they might say, I don't know how I feel. I don't know what emotion's coming up. Well, let's just start with the body then. I'm very body focused. We go for 2 hours and then we will do a checkout and just see how everybody's doing. We often work with a bit of trauma that we're sharing in these cases. So we want to make sure we're grounded before we leave and go on to our next part of our day. I want to make this a space where you can come in and say, the client's all over the place, I'm all over the place, and I don't really know what I'm doing. We all have those moments. I have those moments where it's like, why am I stuck with this client? What am I missing? And then you talk to someone else and they see a blind spot you never saw. That's why I love the group. I want to have a space where it's vulnerable, where you can come in and say, I don't even know what my question is. I'm going to throw this case out with you guys and see what comes back at me. So I really value the freedom of being vulnerable in the group. Let's talk about transference. Let's talk about the taboo things. We're supposed to love all of our clients, but the fact that we can acknowledge and recognize that I'm having something going on with this client, that's the best thing we can do, because now we can hold it in parallel while we're working with them, and we can get it out of our system by sharing it in the group. So that's really the main goal, is to make it a space where you can feel comfortable just being who you are. And some weeks you might show up and say, I've been up all night with a kid and I just need to have my camera off. Or you might be somebody who says, oh, I've got a case I want to share today. And so that's how it works. So if you're interested in group supervision from a neuropsychoanalytic, neurodynamic point of view, I'd love to have you book a meet and greet session for us to have a consultation. Of course, that's at no charge. We could chat for a little bit about what your needs are, how I work, but I would love to see you in group. So please come and join us and give it a try. Or if you're interested in taking our 12-hour course on neurodynamic, neuropsychoanalytic psychotherapy, please check the link in the description or the link on our website. We'd love to have you in the course or see you in supervision. Bye for now.